American Psycho. This is a viewer request. It's definitely not the type of movie that I generally watch. Horror is not my preferred genre, and I just don't get film noir at all. If it weren't a viewer request, honestly, I would have turned this off. It's hard to watch. In my INTJ brain, it wasn't making any sense. And it was really cold and violent. I couldn't figure out if the main character was drifting into psychosis, if it was a dream, or what. So I did some research after watching it and found out that it is based upon a book that people called unfilmable. I haven't really read the book, but I think that reading it would probably make it make more sense because this is actually a really well loved book and film. So I slept on it, and somewhere in my dream state, it all came together. And I realized that some of the most nonsensical things were jokes about the insane self indulgent and conformity of the 80s. Without that, the movie really doesn't make any sense. And I share this because if you're like me and your first impression is, what the heck? I encourage you to endure. There's really a lot here that can teach you about mental health and yourself. So, as with all movies, there are many directions that this can go when it comes to human psychology. It's probably going to be hard to follow if you haven't seen the movie, and there are spoilers, so you probably want to see the movie first. But what we are focusing on today is what it's like to have no sense of self or identity. Lots of people are walking around going through life doing what they do, and they have no sense of self. It's not really imposter syndrome. With imposter syndrome, you're trying to be someone else or you're trying to create a vision of who you want people to think you are. No sense of self goes further. It's like you don't know how to be a person and you're presenting a vision of who you think a person is supposed to be. There is an actor part who's doing the doing and the observer part who is standing outside of yourself watching all this and judging. And the observer is calling the shots and telling you how to present. It may think that you're doing a great job in the moment, but after the performance is over, it feels empty and like it's not enough. So there's always this striving to do more, to be better, and to do it all better than anyone else. And also a part of it, strangely, who wants to be seen as yourself, wants to be seen as authentic. What put this together for me was the opening scene. So you watch Patrick Bateman going through his morning routine. He's very meticulous and seems to be image conscious. Then he says there's an idea of Patrick Bateman, some kind of abstraction, but there's no real me, only an entity, something illusory. And though I can hide my cold gaze, and you can shake my hand and feel the flesh gripping yours, and maybe you can even sense our lifestyles are probably comparable, I am simply not there. He also says, I have all the characteristics of a human being: flesh, blood, skin, hair, but not a single clear, identifiable emotion except for greed and disgust. Something horrible is happening inside of me, and I don't know why. My nightly bloodlust has overflown into my days. I feel lethal, on the verge of frenzy. I think my mask of sanity is about to slip. While it's not common for people to deal with having no sense of self by going out and killing people, there really are people like this. So let's talk about what this is and how it happens. Okay. So at the root, this is all about trauma and a lack of attachment. It starts in childhood or maybe even in utero. So while in utero and up to about 6 months of age, the child either develops a sense of connection or he doesn't. The child is a part of the mother while in utero, and her thoughts and feelings are his thoughts and feelings. He doesn't have a differentiated sense of self yet because you need separation for that, and he's not separate. So if he doesn't feel safe, he survives this by disconnecting from himself. So he shuts down emotions, his connection to his body, and the connection with others, and even their very sense of existence. And this can happen in different ways, such as dissociation, splitting, and attempting to become invisible. If this isn't you, or isn't someone close to you who has shared their perspective, it might seem really strange, but it's about survival. There's always a part of us that wants to keep us safe. So if I feel attacked or threatened, I need to do something, get out of the way, fight back, play dead so that they lose interest and it's not fun anymore. Or play nice so they think that we're on the same side, something. Then there's another part of us that needs connection. And this isn't an individual need, it's a human need. We need social connection for practical reasons, like I can't produce everything I need to survive. But through shared labor and trade, we can all survive together. But there are social reasons too. I need someone to look at me with approval, to laugh with me, to touch me. We all need this. So part of me wants to be loved and cared for by the person who's threatening me, in most cases, my parents. And when these two parts are working against each other at the same time, it creates a split in my sense of self and makes my nervous system go into a trauma response. Bingo. My attachment style is unhealthy and my nervous system is set up for complex PTSD. Now, that's great in theory, but how do I know that that's what's happening? Well, you'll see the person's actions don't match their words. For example, when the guys are checking out each other's business cards, Patrick says, "Very nice," as if he's supportive and approves. Meanwhile, inside, he's seething with jealousy and insecurity. He feels threatened because his colleagues chose superior people and he starts unraveling. When he lures Paul Allen into his apartment, he's engaging in that charming banter the entire time. And he's talking about a musical artist, which one I don't remember. I think it's Phil Collins. And then he puts his raincoat on and chops Paul with an axe. When he's with his girlfriend, Evelyn, he acts like he loves her and he wants to be with her, but behind her back, he's sleeping with prostitutes, her best friend, and has no sense of loyalty at all. He's also not very affectionate with Evelyn. And even when they go out to dinner and have sex, there's no intimacy at all. So his whole life is a mismatch between his words and his actions. Another tell that the problem is a lack of sense of self is that the person will make a decision and then fail to follow through, be unable to make choices or make choices that are at odds with what they really want. And this can look like they're indecisive or stuck, but what's really happening is that they desire to be safe and it's competing with their need to connect. Patrick does this too. He tells Evelyn, "My need to engage in homicidal behavior on a massive scale cannot be corrected, but I have no other way to fulfill my needs. We have to break up." She laughs it off as a joke, and Patrick doesn't press it. In a different scene, Evelyn asks Patrick why he has dinner with people that he hates, and he says, "Because I want to fit in." He doesn't feel safe with these people. He doesn't like these people, but he wants their approval, and he wants to be seen as normal, and this is really sad. Near the end, Patrick goes on a shooting rampage and feels that he's about to be caught. He calls his lawyer and confesses everything. And the next day, he runs into his lawyer, who treats it all like a joke and calls him by someone else's name. And Patrick backpedals. Now, these are extreme examples. In the real life, they'd be more things like saying, "I want to go to college," and then never applying or enrolling or going to class. It could even be smaller things like not being able to decide where to go to dinner. Another example could be that you complete a project that you've been working on for a while, but you don't let anyone see it or never mention it. I think by bringing it down to earth, you can probably start to see people like Patrick now, right? Now, I said that people with this issue are divorced from their bodies. In real life, this could be things like medication having no effect on them or having the opposite effect. We don't have any concrete evidence of this with Patrick Bateman, but we do see that he's detached from his body in the way that he kills and has sex. When he's with the prostitute and call girl, he's filming himself having sex. He doesn't appear to be enjoying it. He's flexing, looking at the camera, and making it a performance. His mind and body appear to be completely separate. Then, in all the killings, he's typically talking calmly as he's preparing for the surprise. He's ice cold. He retains composure the entire time, and it looks like he feels nothing. Again, in real people, it's different, but the same. In real people, it's probably going to be something like they have a really high threshold for pain, so their body isn't registering that it hurts. Now, when someone has developmental trauma and they don't form normal attachments to people and don't feel safe, this probably doesn't stop as they get older because it's environmental. I mean, do their parents get it together when they're 6 months old and then life proceeds normally? Not usually. So, between 6 months and 2 years, the child either develops attunement or he doesn't. If the parents recognize and respond to the baby's emotions, they learn how to do this with other people. They begin to reach out for people. They take it in affection and they give emotional and physical comfort. And if they don't get this, they shut out the awareness of their own needs. and begin to care for other people's needs. In other words, they become people pleasers. They gain safety by making their caregivers feel safe. For example, if mom is stressed out and I can calm her down by making her laugh, her nervous system is going to calm down and relax. Her energy is lighter and everybody is safer. Lots of comics have this family background. Their humor developed as a way to stay safe. Obviously, Patrick Bateman isn't a people pleaser. His tuning out of his emotions took a darker turn, perhaps because it wasn't safe to try to please his parents either. We don't know. But we do know that he wasn't aware of other people's emotions or needs. There's a scene where Patrick has on headphones and he's thinking to himself, I'm trying to listen to my new Robert Palmer tape, but Evelyn keeps buzzing in my ear. He's completely unable to attune to other people's feelings. And if you lack attunement, you probably also lack trust. That's the next thing that children develop. What happens here is that the parents lose their kids' trust. They don't mean what they say or say what they mean, so they're unreliable. And kids learn to depend on themselves only. They develop a need to control the environment and are often perfectionistic. And this is an attempt to stay safe. Since they trust that they can handle what happens, they want all the power and control. They also want things to be perfect so nothing falls apart and they can feel safe. They don't do vulnerability and they don't depend on others. They also prefer that others not depend on them because they don't want to take care of anybody. This one's subtle in American Psycho, but it's definitely there. Patrick doesn't trust that anybody will think he's important if he can't get a reservation at Dorsia. When Patrick sees that Paul Allen's apartment overlooks the park and is nicer than his, he has a meltdown. And this is another threat to his safety, and he doesn't trust that anyone will think he's enough. To have trust, you have to have vulnerability, and Patrick isn't vulnerable to anyone. He doesn't know himself, doesn't know what he thinks, runs with people who don't see him, and he doesn't see them. So everything's about optics, so this whole lifestyle just feeds his insecurities. The more he plays the status game, the deeper the emptiness becomes. If a child doesn't develop trust, they probably don't have autonomy either, and that's the next stage of development. This seals the deal for Patrick because autonomy is basically freedom to be oneself. If you grew up with restrictive parents, overprotective parents, controlling parents, and you didn't get to make your own age-appropriate decisions, didn't make mistakes, or explore, you probably didn't develop autonomy. Someone with autonomy can set appropriate boundaries, say yes, say no, and speak their mind without fear, guilt, or shame. Patrick's not afraid to say what he thinks, but nobody believes him. He has no boundaries, though. I mean, killing people is a gigantic boundary violation. Sleeping with your girlfriend's best friend is a boundary violation. And Patrick's murder is his way of acting out. When we act out, it's because we can't say what we want or feel, or maybe nobody's listening. So as his frustration grows, his acting out grows too. It's a way of getting attention and saying, I'm here, see me. And this explains the end when we get there. But let's finish up the stages of development because there's one more. And that's love and sexuality. If we don't have the foundation of autonomy, trust, attunement, and connection, our sexual relationships won't be healthy. They can't be, because this is about the ability to feel safe enough to give and receive love and bring your heart into relationships. And Patrick has no heart. So his sexual relationships are tied to conquest, performance, control, looks, and achievement. He has a high body count, he's successful. If he looks like a porn star, he's successful. If he lives the fantasy of having two women at once, he's successful. If he can get his girlfriend's best friend to betray her with him, he's successful. All his ways of keeping score are warped. He's unfulfilled and empty because he has no love in his life. So all this is how a creature like Patrick Bateman came into being. When I was first watching this, I thought it was outlandish. The character wasn't at all realistic. But when I put on the trauma lens and the attachment lens and it incorporated it into the understanding that this was intentionally ridiculous to look humorous, it all started to make sense. Patrick did all of these things to survive. He did all this to be perfect, and he still feels like nobody. Going back to the ambivalence and indecisiveness, if you ask Patrick if he wanted to be somebody, he's probably either going to say no because it's too dangerous and risky to be seen, and yes. I mean, all his acting out in murder was a desperate cry to have his rage and pain seen. The irony is that all the things he was and did to make him perfect were the very things that shielded him from being seen. His privilege and good looks meant that he was treated as special, so he wasn't questioned. He walked right past the doorman dragging a body wrapped in a bag, and the doorman didn't bat an eye. His running around to all the trendy places and wearing the right clothes to fit in made him blend into a sea of 80s yuppies. Everyone kept getting their names mixed up because they were all so alike. So there's zero individuality, and I'd be screaming to be seen too. Finally, the movie ends with Bateman thinking, there are no more barriers to cross. All I have in common with the uncontrollable and the insane, the vicious and the evil, all the mayhem I have caused and my utter indifference toward it, I have now surpassed. My pain is constant and sharp, and I do not hope for a better world for anyone. In fact, I want my pain to be inflicted on others. I want no one to escape. But even after admitting this, there is no catharsis. My punishment continues to elude me, and I gain no deeper knowledge of myself. No new knowledge could be extracted from my telling. This confession has meant nothing. So he's saying that he hasn't achieved what he most desired, which was relief from being no one. If he had been punished, it would have meant that someone saw his evil deeds and labeled him a corrupt man, but in his shallow, yuppie world, no one sees anybody. There are no relationships and no connections. It's all a superficial show. So is he crazy, or is our society crazy? Society pushes us to be successful, beautiful, and have a wild and fun highlight reel so that other people can admire us on social media. Many have us make sure that our kids have the right look, go to the right school, and are on the right travel ball team so that they have all the advantages. But is that the right thing? Is that better than allowing kids to roam free, ride bikes in the neighborhood, and explore until the streetlights come on? The first thing to develop in children is a sense of connection and belonging. This is where the real safety happens, in belonging to someone, to a family and a tribe. All that other stuff is a cover up for not having the safety and belonging of a tribe. And it's a poor substitute. So how do you get that if you didn't get it as a child? You start where the disruption began, with the attachment and trauma. You can do all the journaling, retreats, and skill building that you want to, but until you heal that core wound, you're building on a shaky foundation. You've got to do the work of repairing your attachment so you feel safe with people. And people are social learners. That's why Patrick had no chance of getting out of this hell in New York City surrounded by people who look just like him. They're reinforcing his coping strategies because that's their lifestyle. He has to be with healthy people to learn what they do and be reinforced with those healthy habits. We can only get well in healthy environments. If you have a healthy therapist, coach, pastor, boss, or helper of some sort, that helps tremendously, but this is not where you live. You need this to be part of your daily life, like a good AA group where you go for several hours a week. And if you don't have one, please consider joining my private community. The link's in the show notes. And your community needs a structure that points out what you're seeing, feeling, and doing to help to make it conscious. That's what this show is about. It's making conscious what we see in the movies and answering questions like, why do I like this movie? And how am I like this character? And even, what did they do that I should either do or avoid? Movies can be great teachers because they're typically either entertaining or thought-provoking, and also non-threatening because we're a step removed from them so we can stand back and take it in without being overwhelmed by it. I went into American Psycho not really digging it at all. It's dark, violent, confusing, and doesn't leave me feeling hopeful or light. But once I got over the gore and the confusion, I can see why it's a cult classic. While I probably won't ever watch it again because I don't really do violence, I do love the strange ambiguity of whether he actually did it or not, and the confusion about how much of the story is real and how much of it is fabricated in his mind. I can see the humor much more clearly now, and viewing American Psycho as a dark comedy works a lot better than viewing it from a horror lens for me. But either way, it's a great way to understand how a person becomes a true nobody. Not because they lack status, but because of trauma and attachment. So I hope that was a fun and informative ride for you. Subscribe so you get notified when the next show drops. This is our last film in the horror month. So if you're a horror fan, you won't want to miss this. So see us next week. Ciao.